If you have a ball, whether it's a dog ball, a golf ball, a tennis ball or a spiky ball, you're going to just find the ball underneath your foot and place it just behind the base of the big toe, and you're going to push down and back, rolling that back towards the heel bone, and then gently roll it back to the base of the second toe, push down and roll forwards to the heel, gently roll back to the base of the third, press down and roll forwards, bring it back to the base of the fourth, press down, roll all the way through to the heel, roll it back, base of the fifth toe, roll it all the way down that outside point of the foot. Then just come back to find the ball just behind the balls of your foot. Stand up really tall and reach your heel down into the floor so you get a really nice calf stretch. If you've got full movement, you should be able to get the heel down to the floor depending on how big your ball is. If you've got a really enormous ball, you might not. But you're hoping to try and reach that heel bone down to the floor and get a lovely calf stretch. And hold it for a stretch. And then release off. And before we lift up the other foot, just place that foot down on the floor and really feel the deepened sensation of that foot down into the floor. Then you're going to lift up your other foot, base of the big toe, push down and roll that ball back to the heel, bringing it gently back up to the second toe. Down and back to the heel, gently back up to the third, down and back to the heel, gently back up to the fourth, down and back to the heel, gently back up to the fifth, and push down and back to the heel bone. And then come back, bringing the ball just behind the ball of your foot. Stand up nice and tall and reach through the heel bone, trying to reach it towards the floor. So you're really stretching down through the calf, releasing it down into the floor, and breathe, allowing it to stretch. And then releasing the ball away. Let the ball go wherever it wants to go and just replace that second foot down to the floor. And just take a moment to feel those feet. I want you to visualize the base of your big toes, the base of your little toes, and I want you to visualize the center of your heel bone, right in the center of it. And between the center of your heel bone and the base of your big toe, there's a guy rope. And between the center of your heel and the base of your little toe, there's a guy rope. And then going across from the base of your big toe across to the base of your little toe, there is your third guy rope. So I want you to visualize the triangles on the soles of each of your 2 feet and find that slight doming of the sole of the foot and then soften it down, but really connecting those 3 corners into the floor. You're going to then just bend and straighten your knees, allowing yourself to visualize the dome of the foot widening as you bend and shortening as you straighten. So you're visualizing that sense of widening and shortening of the foot. So you're stretching the base of the foot, which stores energy, and then the energy is released as you release up into standing. So just gently bending and straightening those knees. And just enjoying a softness, allowing the hips and knees and ankles to bend and straighten with a real softness about them. And the feet are not rolling in or out. You're staying focused on those 3 points in each of your feet. So if you look down at your feet as you do this, they're not rolling or wobbling on through the ankles. Couple more. And then you're going to come to standing straight. And when you're standing straight, I'm going to turn sideways on. I want you to focus on just tipping the weight forwards into the balls of your feet, not so far that you tip over. And then you're going to bring the weight back over the heel and then just behind the heel, so you almost want to lift the balls of your feet off and tip backwards, but I don't want you to go quite that far. Tipping forwards and tipping backwards, all the way just behind your centre of gravity, going forwards, and then come back this time and try and find the point at which you feel that your pelvis, your hip joints, your knees and your ankles are all stacked up on top of each other, and then the weight shifts forwards into the balls of the feet, so you've got half of your weight in the heels, half of your weight in the balls of your feet, and then you're stacked up nicely through the legs into the pelvis. We're then going to just think about our breath, and I'm going to get everybody to put their hands on the sides of their rib cage, and you can bring your fingertips towards each other if you want to, because sometimes that's a nice reference, but only if you can keep your thumbs around the sides, because then I want you to soften your shoulders, lengthen your neck, and I want you to breathe into your hands, into the sides of your body. And as you do that, your fingers should come apart. And then as you breathe back out, they should come back down together. Breathing in, push those fingers apart. And breathing out as you bring the fingers back together. 2 more, breathing in. And breathing out, soft shoulders. And again, breathing in. And breathing out. And then relax the arms and release the shoulders. Visualize your pelvis stacking down through your hips, knees and ankles into the feet. And then I want you to visualize lifting the spine up and out of that pelvis, growing long all the way up through the spine, up through between the shoulder blades, between the base of the neck and up through into the base of the skull. And then I want you to breathe in and slide those shoulder blades up the back of the rib cage. And breathe out and release the shoulder blades back down. Breathing in and up. And breathing out and down. So last time, breathing in and up. And breathing out and down. I want you to soften your shoulders, and I want you to focus on your breath. And I want you to place one hand on your breastbone and one hand on your belly. And I want you to breathe in, and I want you to notice that the hand on your belly will lift forwards and back in, and I want the hand on your breastbone to stay nice and soft. So this is just focusing on your diaphragm. So what's happening here is your rib cage isn't moving a whole lot. But as you breathe in, your belly is dropping forwards because your diaphragm is lowering. Inside the rib cage, it pulls down and therefore pushes your belly forwards. So I just want you to exercise that diaphragm for a few breaths, breathing in and breathing out and breathing in and breathing out. So we've worked both the diaphragm and we've worked the rib cage, and we've tried to keep this area soft, but this apical area of the lungs is the area we don't want to be breathing in all the time, but it's also useful to stretch it occasionally. So what I want you to do now is place your hands on your breastbone, and I want you to breathe up into that area. Often after a few breaths it can actually make you feel slightly more stressed and anxious, but I just want you to try and expand that part of the lungs, and then we'll go back to breathing more deeply lower down. So breathing in and breathing out. Trying to raise the breastbone, breathing in and breathing out. 2 more, breathing in and breathing out. And one more time, really filling the hands and breathing out. And then going back to your relaxed breath back down into the belly. And so now we're going to think about the lobes of the lung, and I want you to think inside your rib cage. These are much bigger than obviously they're going to be inside, but you've got 3 lobes on your right hand side. Now if I mirror you, that will be this side. Try not to knock the microphone. And then on the left hand side you will have an upper and lower lobe, and then your heart will be in between those lobes. I want you to visualize those lobes. They can glide over each other when we move, and so we're going to do some breathing with some side bending, visualizing the lobes of the lung moving. So we're going to take one arm up and we're going to put the other arm round onto our ribs, and we're going to breathe in as we side blend across and breathe out to come back up. Breathing in. Visualize the lobes, those 3 lobes on that right hand side, lifting and sliding over each other as you inflate them as you breathe in. And breathing out, Legs are soft, not gripping. Breathing in. And breathing out. And reinflate those lungs, breathing in. Really fill the side of the lungs up. And breathing out. And then release that arm down. Float up the left side. Put your right hand across on the left side of the rib cage. And again, you're going to breathe into those lobes on the left side. They're going to inflate and slide over each other as you side bend. And breathe out to release. Breathe in. Fill those lobes of lungs up and let them slide over each other. And breathing out to release back down. Breathing in. And breathing out. And breathing in. And breathing out and releasing down. And just circle your shoulders off. We're now going to think about the diaphragm. So we're going to do almost the opposite to what we've just done. So instead of visualizing those lobes sliding and inflating, we're going to think of the diaphragm. As you breathe in, it lowers down and drops. As you breathe out, it comes back up inside the rib cage. We are going to use the out breath as we side bend away to stretch the diaphragm as it recoils back up into our rib cage. So we're going to have you're going to have your right arm up and your left hand around the right hand side of your rib cage. And this time you're going to take a breath in to prepare, and then you're going to breathe out as you go across. It will feel very different to the last exercise, and you're looking for some kind of stretching sensation down through the sides of your rib cage. Really push the air out and then breathe in to come up. Fill the lungs and then breathe out. Push all the air out and breathe in and breathe out. Push the air out and breathe in and push the air out and breathe in. This time we're going to keep working that diaphragm stretch, but as we go out this way with the out breath, we're then going to try and rotate forwards, and so we're taking our chest slightly towards the floor and keep with that out breath all the way through and then come back out. So we're going to take a breath, breathing out, side bend, and then turn slightly to face the floor and get a deeper stretch in the back of your body here. And then breathe in to come back up. Breathe out, side bend, and then rotate and keep breathing out. And breathe in. Breathe out, side bend, and then slightly rotate, finding that stretch in that back corner of the rib cage. And breathe in and release that arm down. We're then going to do the same on the other side. So you're going to float up your left arm, put your right hand across onto that left side of the rib cage. And then we're going to breathe out as we side bend across. Push the air all the way out. And then breathe in to come back up. And breathing out. Keep breathing out, breathing out, breathing out all the way across. Finding that stretch of the diaphragm and breathing in. And breathing out all the way across. Keep breathing out, breathing out, breathing out. And breathing in. One more like this. Breathing out, breathing out, breathing out, breathing out all the way across. And breathing in. And then we're going to finish with the side bends, adding the rotation forwards so you get that slight stretch through the back of that back corner of that rib cage. So taking an in-breath to prepare. Breathing out, side bend, and keep breathing out as you reach forwards, taking your breastbone to face towards the floor. Then breathe in to come up. Breathing out, rotating forwards, keep breathing out and breathing in. Breathing out and then rotating forwards, keep breathing out and breathing in. Last one, breathing out, keep breathing out, rotate forwards and breathing in. And circling your shoulders off. What was I going to do next? Right, we're going to do some breath work which most of you who come regularly will be familiar with. So we're going to stand with the fingers interlinked and we're going to breathe in, just bringing the hands towards the chest but not shrugging your shoulders, keep your shoulders down. Then you're going to breathe out. I'm going to turn sideways so you can see. Bend your knees, tuck your tail, round through the back, release your head and shoulders. Your collarbones and shoulder blades are wide. Your ribs here are pulling back in. Breathing out. Then push your hands forwards and breathe in and up. And lift your chest up to the sky so you get a bit of a back bend, but don't let your hips sway forwards. Keep your hips over your ankles. And then breathing out to release. We're going to do 5 of these. Breathing in. Breathing out, drop the knees, tuck the tail, round the back, pull the ribs in. Breathing in and up. Lift the breastbone high and then release the hands and breathing out. And breathing in and up. Breathing out, tuck the tail, round through the back, release the head, pull the bottom ribs back, reach through the heels of your hands. Breathing in and up. Lift the breastbone high and breathing out. And again, breathing in and up. Breathing out, rounding through the spine, reaching through the heels of the hands, pushing forwards and up, breathing in. Breathing out. And last one, breathing in. Breathing out, reaching forwards, breathing in. Lift the breastbone up, breathing out, and circling your shoulders. We're just going to do a little bit more shoulder work. So we're going to, more to do with the neck, I think. So we're going to just lift your left ear away from your left shoulder. You're going to breathe in, slide the shoulder blade up. And you're going to breathe out, drop the shoulder blade down, keeping the ear lifting up and away. So you get that lovely stretch, breathing in and up. And breathing out and releasing down. And again, breathing in and up. And breathing out, releasing that neck from that shoulder girdle. Breathing in and up. And breathing out and down. And then float the head up. We're then going to float that left arm out to the side, and you're going to now reach the ear away, so you may get some neural stretching through the arm. So you're going to reach that ear away and coming back up, and reaching the ear away and coming back up, and reaching the ear away and coming back up, and last time, reaching the ear away. Hold it on a gentle stretch. Lift the arm up to your ear and then reach the arm back down and bring the head up. And then we're going to take the right ear away from the right shoulder, and you're going to slide the shoulder blade up and release it down away from your ear. Breathing in and up, breathing out, releasing it down, and breathing in and up, breathing out, releasing it down, breathing in and up, and breathing out, releasing it down away from the ear, getting that nice separation between those muscles that hold the neck and the shoulders together. And then float the head up. Take the arm up and out to the side, and again side bend away and coming back up, noticing if you've got that neural tension down into the arm. If so, be gentle, don't overstretch it, just work within your tolerance, trying to release the neck from that whole shoulder girdle tension. Holding it there, just giving that ear a lift up and away from the shoulder into that stretch. And then releasing, bring the arm up. And then releasing it all the way down and circling the shoulders off. And really use that shoulder girdle movement. See how wide you can make those shoulder blades circle. One more. And then reversing the circle. Reversing the way the shoulder girdle's pulling. And one more. And release those arms. Lovely. So we're going to do some roll downs, and then we're going to go down onto the mat. And I'm just going to remind myself what we're going to do on the mat first. So I think we're starting in 4-point kneeling. So yes, we're just going to do some roll downs. So most of you know what you're doing for roll downs. So again, stand, your hips are over your feet. Your head is nice and lengthened, neck and head is lengthened. You're going to take a breath, and as you breathe out, you're going to reach that head and neck forwards. And as you reach it forwards, it's going to slowly pull through the upper body all the way around. You're pulling your bottom ribs back and you're lifting your belly up and in as you round forwards. And to start with, just go to sort of halfway, don't go all the way down. If you know you don't like going all the way down, stop here and do some stretches into cat-cow here. If you know you're okay to go all the way down, you can continue to release down, and you're trying to lift your sit bones up to the sky and release the spine out of the pelvis and let the head and neck release to the floor. If you're not sure if it is, hold it and just gently try and let it go and make sure it's fully relaxed. Taking a big breath there. As you breathe out, you're going to then pull the sit bones down and lift the belly up and in to help pull the pelvis back up to its neutral position on those hip sockets. And then you're lifting through the belly to restack the vertebra one by one, coming back up to your standing position. Take a big breath in and breathing out, dropping the head forwards and down, rounding through the back, pulling the bottom ribs back, lifting the belly up and in, tipping forwards from the hip joints, and then start reaching the sit bones up to the sky, releasing the spine out of the pelvis, letting the head and neck fall to the floor. Take a big wide breath in. Breathing out, pull the sit bones down, lift the belly up and in. Restack the vertebra all the way through. Coming up with the head and neck last. We're going to do 2 more. Big breath in. Breathing out, drop the head forwards. If you're doing cats and cows, that's fine. Just keep working with them, trying to make the movement long and smooth. Tip forwards, lifting your sit bones to the sky, lengthening from your heel to the sit bone, lifting it up. If you're not sure if you're lifting it, put your fingers there and try and reach from here. Take a big breath. Breathing out, pull the sit bones down, lift the belly up and in, pull the ribs up and in. Restack. Lifting the head and shoulders up. Last one, big breath in. Breathing out, releasing down. All the way. Lifting the sit bones to the sky, letting the head fall away from the shoulders, releasing all that tension. Big breath in. Breathe out, pull the sit bones down, lift the belly up and in. Finding yourself back up in standing. Right, we're going to go over to the end of your mat, and you're going to, or blanket or whatever you've got for the floor, and come down onto your hands and knees, and hopefully you can still see me on the screen. You don't need anything else for the moment, just the floor. So you want your hip joints over your knees, and you want your hands underneath your shoulders. And as those of you who come to my class know, we take a moment setting up the palms in the same way we set up the feet at the beginning of the class. So you're looking at the base of your index finger, the base of your little finger, those knuckle joints, are the front 2 corners of your palm, and the back corners are the base of your thumb right down at the bottom by your wrist, and the outside corner of your wrist joint. And I want you to try and widen those 4 corners of your palm into the floor, spreading out your palmar fascia. If that feels really tight, then your palmar fascia is tight, and you want to try and widen and lengthen it. At the same time, try and reach through the fingers and lengthen through into the fingers. So you've got some weight through the knuckle joints and forwards into your fingers, as well as some weight in the base of the wrist, but it shouldn't all be dumping into the wrist. There should be weight spreading forwards into the hands. So from here, we're going to just do some cat-cow, like some people did in standing. So you're going to reach your sit bones to the wall behind you and reach the crown of your head to the wall in front of you. So you've got a really nice flat back. You're then going to take a breath, and as you breathe out, you're going to tuck the tailbone under, and you're lifting using your belly muscles. Really pull them up and in, and widen through the rib cage as you drop your head down between your arms. Keep your shoulder blades wide. Keep your belly and bottom ribs lifting. Take a breath. Breathe out, keep your head and shoulders as they are, and just lift the tailbone. So just lift from the bottom of the spine, dropping through the lower back, but keep your belly lifting so it's active. Drop through the bottom ribs, and as you do that, you'll start to send your breastbone forwards, lifting your head up, looking towards the front of your mat, or forwards along the floor. Hold your shoulders like this and your head and neck like this as you start tucking the tailbone using your belly button, pulling it up into your spine, pulling your bottom ribs up, and as you do that, you're going to drop your head to look between your arms towards the inner thighs. Release the head and neck there. Keep that position of the shoulders and head as you start to lift from the tailbone, lifting it up, dropping through your lower back, but keeping your tummy muscles active, dropping through the bottom ribs, then sending your breastbone forwards, lifting up through the crown of the head. Big breath in. We're going to do one more rounding, dropping from the tailbone, keeping your head and shoulders as they are, lifting that belly up into the spine, make the abdominal muscles work, pull through the bottom ribs, drop the head and neck. This time in this position, we're going to hold this position in this rounded C shape, and you're going to drop your sit bones back towards your heels, keeping your shoulder blades and collarbones wide so you really open and stretch those shoulders. Now from here I want you to breathe really wide and deep into your rib cage, trying to spread the ribs wide. All the way up to your armpits, really widen the ribs, and breathing out. And once more, really breathe into the ribs and breathe out. Now push the palms down into the floor and imagine you're pulling yourself back up, keeping the C shape. Keep that C shape of the spine, the rounded shape. And then once you're back over your wrists, then you can lengthen out through the tail, reaching the sit bones behind you, and lift the head up so the crown of the head is reaching to the wall straight in front of you. So you're back in your nice strong neutral spine. We're then going to do some thread the needle. So you're going to all lift up your right palm and place it on the floor behind your left wrist. You're then going to reach through that space, and you're going to drop your head towards the floor. You're going to make sure your pelvis is square, and you're going to try and reach that arm a little bit further, so you're getting some rotation through the rib cage, and the back of the shoulder might be a bit of a stretch. Then push back through the left hand to slide back up. Bend that left elbow as you reach the right hand through. Make sure you don't change your pelvis position, lowering the head towards the floor, rotating through the body. Take some big breaths here. So you're really mobilizing that rib cage in a stretch position. So really breathe into the ribs. And one more breath. And then push through the left hand to bring you up. And we're going to do 3 quick ones. So reaching through, lowering the head to the floor and pushing back up. And reaching through, lowering the head to the floor and pushing back up. And last one, reaching through, head to the floor and pushing back up, and bring that right hand back into position. You're then going to lift the left palm up, have the back of the hand on the floor behind the right hand, and then you're going to do the same, so the other way. So you're going to reach that left hand through that space as you drop the head to the floor, looking at your hand that you're reaching through, and just make sure your pelvis is square and you haven't tipped to the side, and breathe into the ribs, and then pushing back up. And then going once more, dropping the head to the floor, keep your hips square, breathe into the rib cage, and just do 3 breaths. Really stretch the ribs as you breathe. And then push back out. And then we're going to do 3 quickly. So we're going to go down, through, drop the head, look under that arm, and then push back up. Bending that right elbow to lower the head to the floor, reaching through, rotating through the spine, pushing back up. Last one, bending that elbow, looking through that space, turning the body, and then pushing back up and coming back and setting your hands. We're now going to come down into child's pose, which is when you drop your belly down towards your thighs, folding yourself up, and we're going to walk the hands all the way around to one side. So you're lengthening, I'm lengthening my right side, so the side with the hand that's reaching to the top, and you're going to find the stretch on that side. Take your hands as far as you can go, keeping your hips and pelvis square, but just side flexing through the body. And then you're going to pause there on that stretch position and breathe. Again, trying to breathe into that tension in the rib cage. Push the ribs and the lungs out into that space where you feel the tension. Try and be soft through the neck so you're not carrying tension in the neck. And one more breath. And then you're going to walk the hands around the mat to the other side until you feel that you're finding that same kind of stretch on the left. For me, it's the left side this time. For you, you might have gone the other way. So keep reaching with the top hand and find that length from the pelvis all the way to the fingertips. Keep the hips square on the heels. And breathe. Try and push the ribs out into that tension you've got. It might be the back of the shoulder blade. It might be the side of the rib cage. It might even be the top of the pelvis where you feel the tension, depending on where your fascial tightnesses are. Breathe into them. 2 more breaths. And last breath. And then walk back to the middle. And then just bring your elbows in and rest your forehead on the backs of your hands. You can separate your knees a little bit if your hips are tight. And I just want you to allow the belly to soften into the thighs. And I want you just to pull the air into the different parts of your rib cage. So first of all, you're going to try and pull the air up into the tops of your shoulder blades, up where I'm pointing. And then you're going to breathe into there. 2 breaths. And then you're going to try and pull the air into the space between your 2 shoulder blades in the middle of your upper back. And you're going to try and pull the air into that space for a couple of big deep breaths. Widening those ribs and making space there. And then the last 2 breaths, you're going to pull down into the lower part of the rib cage and the top of the waist. And try and really fill the air up in there. And then you're going to come back up into sitting, and we're going to go onto our backs. Now, you don't necessarily need a head cushion, but if you want to have a little bit of a folded up towel behind your head, you can. But otherwise, you just want to relax down onto the floor. You want your knees bent, and you want to bring your feet together and have your ankles towards being underneath your knees, as sort of close to your bottom as is comfortable for your knees. You're going to then turn the feet into a small V and line the heels up behind the toes so that you know that your feet are now parallel at hip width apart. And then you're going to follow up your shin bones to your knees, which are pointing to the ceiling. And then you're going to travel down your thighs into your hip sockets. And as you do that, I want you to imagine that those hips are falling deep down into those hip sockets, so they're really relaxed and heavy. Then you're sitting on your pelvis here, and at the back of your pelvis you have a bone called the sacrum, which is a triangular bone. And we generally, when we're in our neutral lumbar position, which is an inward curve, we should have our weight on the bottom half of that triangle towards the coccyx end. So of that big triangular base, your weight is on that bottom half, and that should be where it is now. So the top half of the sacrum is lifting away from the floor up into your lower back, and then as you travel up through your lower back, it drops back down to the floor into your thoracic kyphosis, where your thoracic spine should sit, your rib cage area should sit down on the floor. And as you come up to the top of your ribs, up to the base of your neck, the spine starts lifting away from the floor again into your cervical lordosis, where you have an arch away from the floor. And then you drop down at the top of the neck into the base of the skull. And I want you to imagine that back of your skull is really wide and heavy and sinking into the floor. Your jaw is soft and slightly drawing into your throat, so you've got length at the front and the back of the neck. I want you to turn your palms up and have your arms relaxed by your side, whatever distance away they need to be for you to feel open across the front of the chest. And I want you to take a couple of breaths. And just as you breathe in, I want you to try and deepen the feeling of your ribs down into the mat. So as you breathe wide, I want you to visualize the bucket handle action of those ribs, where they're attached to the breastbone at the front and the spine at the back, and they lift up and out sideways, which we call lateral breathing. So ribs are moving out towards your arms, and they will also fill backwards a little bit into the floor. So you should feel a deepening of your rib cage into the floor as you breathe. So keep focusing on that breath, slow and deep, spiraling the air in through the nose and then back out through the nose. Now, if you are feeling slightly heightened in anxiety with all the stuff going on at the moment, then the breath pattern you want to follow to calm your sympathetic nervous system down, which is your fight and flight system, is the aiming for 7-11 breath pattern. So you'd breathe in for a count of 7, and then you'd try and breathe out for a count of 11. Now that can take some practice to get up to that level. So you can start with breathing in for 3 and then trying to breathe out for 5. But the mechanism of breathing out for at least 2 counts longer than the in-breath dampens down your sympathetic nervous system and helps stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest system, which calms everything down. So if at any point over the next coming weeks you're feeling anxious or stressed, whether you sit back in a relaxed chair or whether you lie on the floor like this, you want to really focus on that lateral rib expansion and the dropping of the diaphragm as you breathe in. And you want to breathe in and out through your nose, which is really important for filtering air and increasing the humidity of the air that enters your lungs, which is really important for lung health. But the most important thing to calm your system down and get rid of some of the adrenaline and dampen down that fight or flight response is to breathe in for maybe 3 counts or 4 counts or 5 counts, but the out breath is always at least 2 counts longer. And you're aiming eventually to get to 7-11, where you've obviously got a 4 count difference between that in and out breath, and they're really long and slow. So when you breathe out, I want it to be a really relaxed breath. Sometimes we do some working breaths where we really activate our abdominals to push the air out, which you can do at the end of your breath. But if you're going to make an out breath last for 11 counts, you really want the natural elastic recoil of the diaphragm to be slowly deflating the lungs. And then you only bring in the abdominals right at the end to keep that out breath going for the count, the longer count. So hopefully you're continuing to breathe and really focusing on that number counting. And we're now going to bring in some pelvic work. So at the moment your weight should be on that bottom half of that triangular sacrum. I want you to really feel that heavy down into the floor, and your glutes should be relaxed either side of there. Then I want you to really feel that sacrum as you tuck the tail and push the sacrum down as you roll up to the wider part at the top of the sacrum, the base of the triangle, where you're pushing down towards your lower back. And then breathing in, roll back down that sacrum, really noticing the width of that triangle as it starts to get narrower towards the base. Breathing in. Then breathing out, rolling back up to the wide part of the triangle and towards your lower back. And then breathing in as you roll back down deliberately through that triangular bone. Breathing out, rolling up. I want you to notice as you're rolling up and down, using out breath to roll up, breathing in to roll back to the start. I want you to notice whether you're tracking up and down the center of that triangular bone or whether you tend to veer off to one side or the other. I want you to try and feel that you have even weight through both of your feet, even activity through both of your legs as you roll up and down. I don't want you to feel like you're really pushing with one side or trying harder to move on one side than the other. I want you to try and keep it all soft, and I want you to try and keep it even on left and right as you tuck up and release down. So we're then going to work up into the shoulder bridge. So if your feet feel like they're too far away from your bottom, shuffle them in a little bit more. They want to be underneath your ankles want to be under your knees if they can be. Again, soft shoulders. Really focus on widening your collarbones and drawing your shoulder blades down away from your ears. So you're really open at the front of the chest. You're then going to take a breath, and as you breathe out, you're going to roll up to the wide part of the triangular of the sacrum down into the lower back. You're going to pause there, take a breath, And as you breathe out, you're going to start reaching through your thighs as you peel your sacrum off the floor, lifting your bones, your vertebra, away from the floor one bone at a time, all the way up until you feel that you're resting on your shoulder blades. Keep reaching through the knees, wide through the collarbones. If I poured, now you're up, if I poured water down the leg, from a bucket of water down your legs, it would run down the front of the thighs, through the front of the hips, down through your belly, down through your breastbone and fall off your collarbones and pool around the base of your neck. And then to come back down, keep reaching through the knees, standing into your feet. Try and find those three corners of those feet that we found at the beginning of the class whilst you're up in this position. And then try and breathe out and sink the breastbone down, keeping the collarbones wide, all the way to place one bone down at a time through the spine. Think of the different vertebrae stacked up and you're trying to release them down into the floor. One at a time until you get back to the top of that sacrum, that wide part of the triangle, and then release down into the narrower part of the triangle at the bottom of the sacrum. Take a big breath here. Breathe out, roll up the sacrum to the base and the lower back. Take a pause breath. Breathe out, reach through the knees, peeling the vertebra away from the floor one at a time. Keep reaching through the knees and finding the three corners of each foot as you stand into the feet, and you're stood in 2 shoulder blades and 2 feet, and the back of your neck wants to be wide and soft on the floor. You don't want to feel like you're pushing with your head. So just rock it from side to side and make sure there's no tension in your neck, because sometimes people will use their neck extensors to try and hold them up in this position. So I want you to be very soft in the shoulders and neck, and I want you to feel like you're being held up through your feet and through your pelvis. And your back is soft and your belly is drawing down and in and is not doming. Your pubic bone wants to be the highest point of your pelvis, not your hip bones. Take a big breath, reach through the knees, and as you breathe out, you're going to sink down through the breastbone. Try and keep the collarbones wide at this point, really sinking down through, all the way through the spine, reaching the base of the back and the top of that sacrum down into the floor, and then rolling back through the sacrum down to the tailbone. We're going to do 2 more, taking a breath, breathing out, rolling up through the sacrum into the lower back. Take a breath. Breathing out, start reaching through the knees, peeling the vertebra off the floor. Keep reaching through the knees and standing into the feet. As you reach, keep the pubic bone the highest point until you're all the way up into the shoulder blades and you're soft in the neck and wide in the collarbones. Big wide breath into the back of the rib cage. So try not to breathe into your belly up here. Try and use that lateral expansion and strengthen the rib cage. Breathing out, collarbones wide, sink through your breastbone, trying to separate your collarbones from the ribs so you're keeping them separate. Reaching through the spine, releasing it down to the floor, lengthening those vertebrae one at a time down into the floor until you reach the top of that sacrum, and then roll back down through the sacrum. Last one, breath in. Breath out, roll up through the sacrum, take a pause breath. As you breathe out, reach through the knees, peeling your spine away from the floor, finding yourself up in the shoulder blades. Wide collarbones, reach through your knees, stand into your feet. Make sure your pubic bone is high and your bottom of your rib cage is soft and not pushing. Big breath in. Breathing out, keep the collarbones wide, sink through that breastbone. Release the spine down into the floor one bone at a time, like a string of pearls, releasing down until you hit the top of that triangular sacrum, and then try and roll down through the sacrum into the bottom half. And then we're going to do some double leg stretch, which is a funny name, but we're just going to do arms only. So you can shuffle your feet slightly further away from your bottom if it's more comfortable. You're staying on your back. You're now reaching your fingertips towards the ceiling. I want you to have straight elbows. We're just going to get our shoulder blade placement correct. So to do that, you're just going to reach your fingertips up so your shoulder blades are separating on your back, and then you're going to draw the shoulder blades back down and together. So you're just going to feel how much movement you've got there, and just get a sense of the location of where your arm bones are in space. And we want to just loosen that up and then get to the point where we can sense that our tops of our arm bones are on the sides of our bodies, not in front and not too far down to the floor. There's a position where we feel that those arm bones are on the sides of our rib cage. And that's where we want to start this exercise. And our shoulder blades want to feel nice and flat on the floor. The backs of our heads want to feel nice and wide and soft onto the floor. We're then going to focus on the breastbone staying heavy and the bottom of our rib cage staying heavy. We're going to breathe wide and deep into the sides of our ribs. And as we breathe out, you're going to sink the breastbone and bottom ribs as you take your arms back to the floor behind you, trying to keep the shoulders moving separately from the rib cage. So what we don't want to see happen at this point is that you've done that and you've lifted your ribs away from the floor. We're wanting you to keep down through the ribs, and we want you to keep the weight in the bottom half of that sacrum, so we don't want you to have flattened into that tilt. Taking a breath and breathing out, and you're going to float the shoulders back, the fingertips back up to point to the ceiling, trying to be aware that these arm bones are staying on the sides of your rib cage, so the collarbones and the shoulder blades are staying wide. Big breath in. Breathing out, floating the arms back, keeping the collarbones and the shoulder blades wide. You might find you hit tightness around the shoulders, so just don't go all the way back if you do. Just go to where you feel comfortable. Take a big wide breath in. Make sure the ribs are staying down on the floor and not lifting away. And breathing out, floating the arms back up. 3 more. Breath in, wide and deep. Breath out, take the arms back to the floor behind you, keeping the collarbones wide, shoulder blades wide, neck long, head soft, ribs heavy. Big wide breath into the sides of the ribs, into the floor, and then breathing out, bringing the arms back up. Big breath in. Breathing out, sink the breastbone, sink the bottom ribs, widen the collarbones and shoulder blades as you take the arms back behind you. Back of the head is soft. Neck is long, big breath in. Breathing out, floating back up. So you're going to do 2 more. Big breath in. Breath out, wide collarbones, wide shoulder blades. Take the arms back, keeping everything wide. Big breath wide into the ribs. Keep your bottom ribs from popping up. And breathing out, floating back up. Last one, big breath in. Big breath out, float the arms back, keeping the ribs heavy down into the floor. Don't let them follow the shoulders. Big breath wide. And breathing out, floating them back up. We're now going to interlink your fingers and bring them behind your head. We're going to do some abdominal work, get some tummy muscles working. The really important thing you need to try to do is keep that weight in that bottom half of your sacrum, the narrower part of that triangle. If you are weak in your abdominals, you may need to roll up a little bit, but I don't want you to collapse your lower back into the floor when you do the abdominal exercises, or you won't be able to train your abdominals correctly. Sometimes you need to do that just to get the movement going, but then slowly you want to try and find that bottom half of the sacrum and try and work with it in that position. So your feet is relaxed, but you can still feel the 3 corners of each of your feet. Your pelvis is in neutral, which means your weight is in that bottom half of the sacrum, and the lower back is lifted away from the floor in a gentle inward curve. Your hands are behind the back of your skull, and then I want you to really focus now, before you lift your head away from the floor, on widening your collarbones and keeping your shoulder blades drawing down away from your ears. So you've got a real sense of openness across the front of the chest. Sorry if I keep tapping the microphone. I'm not used to it. You're then going to hover the head off the floor, and then you're going to reach with your elbows, keeping your collarbones wide, and let the head fall back into those palms so that you're taking the full weight of the head in those hands. Keep the elbows reaching towards the sky and keep the chin dropping into the throat, and keep the collarbones feeling wide and the shoulder blades are down away from your ears. So you're really taking the weight of that head. So you might feel the head is quite heavy, and you're working a little bit in that upper shoulder girdle area to support that head. I will then want you to start focusing on the bottom of the rib cage. whilst keeping the weight in the bottom half of that sacrum. You're going to take a big breath in, and as you breathe out, you're thinking of pulling the bottom ribs towards the pelvis, hopefully without collapsing into the back of the into the top of the pelvis. So you're keeping the weight low down in the sacrum if you can, and then you're pulling the bottom ribs towards the pelvis, and then breathing in to release back down. Breathing out, pulling your ribs towards your pelvis, keeping your head back. Recheck that head position if you start to pull, and then lowering back down. Breathing in to lower, breathing out to pull the ribs towards the pelvis. Breathing in to lower. Breathing out. Keep the head back. Don't pull the head and neck. You're taking the weight of the head, but you're not pulling it. 3 more. Breathing out. Breathing in. Breathing out. Breathing in. And breathing out. And breathing in and releasing back down. Right, we're going to roll onto our sides. I'm going to move my little clip thing here so I don't lie on it. Oh, hang on, errors. Right, so I'm going to clip this back on near the front, and we're going to roll onto our sides. This is when you need your folded towel or small head cushion, because we're going to lie with the head supported, so you're filling the space between your shoulder and your head, so you're not collapsed into the floor. You're going to have your palms stacked, and you're going to have your knees forward, so it's almost like you're sat in a chair, so your hips and knees are at 90 degrees. And we're going to just do some trunk rotations, again thinking about opening the ribs and using our lungs. So first of all, we're just going to lift we're going to slide the hand along the bottom arm, the top hand along the bottom arm, and as you bring it across your breastbone, you're going to roll, opening the chest towards the sky, so you're rolling onto that bottom shoulder blade. You're then going to open that top arm out behind you, lengthening between the fingertips of the hand that's on the floor and the fingertips of the arm that you're reaching behind. You're keeping your hips stacked, so this top hip is not being pulled back. You're keeping this top knee reaching so it stays stacked on the bottom knee. It doesn't want to get pulled back off the bottom knee, so keep them level at the front. And you should feel a stretch through that diagonal, through your pecs, into the front of that shoulder, and then breathing to come back. So we're going to breathe out as we slide and roll and open. Take a rest breath and then really breathe in to stretch, and then breathe out to come back. Breathing in, breathing out, and then breathing in to stretch, and then breathing out. Now if that's enough, keep going with that one. If you feel that feels mobile and you're not too stiff, you can then add this second one where you take the top hand and you slide it up along the floor over your head, and then as it comes past your ear, you then roll back onto that bottom shoulder blade, and then you keep running the fingertips along the floor as long as you can. They might hover at certain points, but you're trying to reach into a big clock, and then coming back over the top of the hip, coming back past the bottom hand, reaching up in a diagonal over. When it comes level with your ear, you'll start to roll back onto the bottom shoulder blade, reach in that diagonal, really reach, trying to keep the fingertips towards the floor if you can. Bring the hands round and down, find the top of the hip again, coming forwards, reaching up and over. Breathing into that stretch as you get into that high diagonal, really breathe into it to stretch. And then reaching behind you, all the way around and coming back over the top of the hip. Last 2, breathing in, finding that big breath in at the top diagonal, and then carrying on round. Back to your start position. Last one. Breathing in and round. Rolling onto the bottom shoulder blade, reaching that high diagonal, keeping your knees stacked. Don't let the top knee pull back. And all the way around. And coming back to start. So for everybody except for me, you can just roll over and face the other way. Just so I stay facing your direction, I'm just going to take my head cushions to the other end of the mat. So we're going to go the same on the other side. Arms out in front of you, knees bent so you've got 90 degrees at your hips, so you feel like you're sat in a chair, and then your knees are 90 degrees. And this top knee stays level with the bottom knee, so it's not pulling backwards from the hip. We're going to start off with just the chest openings before we do the clock. So we're going to slide that top hand along the bottom arm, and as it comes across your chest, you're rolling over onto the bottom shoulder blade, and then you're going to open that top arm behind you, finding that stretch, breathing into it, and then breathing out to bring the arm back. Then taking the top arm, sliding it along the bottom arm, opening the chest, opening the breastbone, lying on the bottom shoulder blade, opening that top arm, breathe into that stretch, and then breathing out to come back. 2 more of those. Breathing in across the breastbone, rolling onto the bottom shoulder blade, opening the arm, really take a stretch breath in there. And breathing out to come back. Last one. Sliding up across the breastbone, unfolding that arm, breath in. You're looking back towards that hand. And breathing out to come back. Then if you feel comfortable with that, we can go into the clock. So you're going to take that top hand up and over, reaching it all the way. As it comes up to your ear, you're going to start to roll onto the bottom shoulder blade, opening that arm in that top diagonal. Keep your knees stacked, because at this point your top knee is going to want to pull backwards. Running the fingertips if you can along the floor. If you can't, just hovering them, but opening through the shoulder. All the way around over the hips, back to the start. Breathing in, reaching that top diagonal, rolling onto the shoulder blade, opening the chest to the sky. You're trying to open the rib cage and chest, breathing into the stretch. And coming round, reaching up and over, trying to keep those knees stacked, because that top knee will want to pull back. It's hard to keep it from pulling back. Using the breath when you find a stretch that you need to work on, really use the breath to stretch into it. And 2 more. All the way up and over, reaching in that top diagonal, all the way round. And last one. Rolling onto the back shoulder blade, stretching, breathing, keeping your knees stacked if you can, and coming back to the start. Lovely. So we are now going to roll onto the front to do a little bit to finish. So on our tummies, you may want to use a folded towel for your forehead. And we're just going to come into this lying position. And we're going to have our hands down by our sides with our palms facing up. And our feet are hip width apart. Lengthen through the back of the neck. And then we're going to just start with some upper back work. So you're going to take a breath, and as you breathe out, I want you to widen your collarbones and draw your shoulder blades down. Turn your palms in to face level with your thighs. Reach those palms towards your feet, trying to widen the collarbones and reach through the crown of the head. You're not lifting the head away at the moment. You're just wanting to feel your shoulder blades really flat on your back. And the top back corners of these shoulders will be really working to hold the arm up and keep the collarbones wide. What will often want to happen is your fronts of your shoulders will want to pop forwards. I want you to keep those as wide as you can and really feel that squeeze at the top backs of the shoulders. Breathe while you're there. Breathe into the back. Wide into the ribs. Do 3 or 4 breaths. And then release the shoulders down. Let the shoulder blades slide off your back. Let your collarbones soften and just relax everything. We're then going to work on the pelvis. So you're going to now reach through both legs. So your knees will lift away from the floor if you're really stretching through those legs and working your quads muscles. So the tops of the feet stay on the floor. You're then going to think about drawing your sit bones together so your glutes are switched on. You're going to make sure your tailbone is slightly heavy so that your belly is lifting up, supporting the front of the pelvis. So your lower back does not want to sag down into the floor when you lift a leg. It wants to stay lengthened. It doesn't want to be rounded, but it wants to stay lengthened and strong. So reach through those legs. Arms are relaxed. Shoulders can stay relaxed for this one. And you're going to try and lift one leg away from the floor and lower it down. And then the other leg away from the floor. And I want you to really focus on the pelvis staying square and not collapsing as you lift the leg away, because you're stabilizing with your tummy muscles, pulling up into the back of the pelvis. So it's the glute muscles that are lifting the leg by shortening and releasing and shortening and releasing, not by you collapsing in the lower back and using your lower back muscles to lift the leg. So it's trying to keep long and strong through the waist, lifting alternate legs. Lovely. Do a few more on each, making sure when we stop, you stop with the leg that you didn't start with. So you've done even. And then release down. Have your hands back down by your sides, keeping them there, because we're going to do one more of the darts, but this time we're going to hover our head. So we're going to take a breath. As you breathe out, you're going to widen your collarbones and reach your shoulder blades down, reaching your fingertips along your thighs, palms facing in. You're then going to hover your head and imagine you're trying to stretch your head towards the wall straight in front of you as you keep those collarbones wide and your shoulder blades drawing down. Then you're going to just lift the hands slightly higher from the floor and reach with the crown of your head. Feeling those shoulder blades really strong on your back, feeling the top back corners of those shoulders working to keep your arms lifted and your chest wide. Big breath in, breathing out and releasing down. Well done. We're going to do one more stretch in this position where we bring our hands up level with our ears and our elbows are bent. We're going to take a breath. We're going to breathe out, hover the face away from the floor. Take one more breath, and as you do that, I want you to sink your breastbone down. So you're keeping your head lifted, but you're really softening your breastbone. Then at the start of the class, we looked at the 3 lobes of the lung on the right and the 2 lobes and the heart in the middle on the left. And when we did those side bends, we visualized sliding those lobes past each other. Well, I'm going to get you to do the cobra, visualizing those lobes of the lungs, the 3 lobes stacked from the bottom to the top of your lungs, sliding over each other as you come up into cobra. So you're just coming up to your elbows and then really widening your elbows to go back down. Take a breath in and then breathing out, sliding those lobes over. Breathing in, getting a bit more slide, and then breathing out to go down. We're going to breathe in on the way up and visualize those slides because I think it works better that way. So breathing in, visualizing the breastbone sliding up and forwards as those lobes slide backwards on each other. Breathing out to come back down. Breathing in, the breastbone's floating forwards and up. The lobes are sliding backwards on each other. Collarbones are wide, shoulder blades are down away from your ears. 2 more. Breathing in, visualize the breastbones pulling forwards and up. The lobes are sliding backwards over each other, looking ahead, and then breathing out. Last one, breathing in all the way as you lift your breastbone forwards, and then breathing out to lower back down. You're going to push back up, because we're just going to come to a finish. We're going to tuck our toes under, and we're just going to sit back on our heels for a moment and just stretch out the soles of the feet. We're then going to put our hands on the floor and lift the knees and release the feet fully to the floor.
And let the body just tip forwards out of the pelvis and release and soften down to the floor, keeping the body released and the head and neck relaxed. Just think about those sit bones and just try and stretch them up to the ceiling. You can do one at a time, or you can do the two together depending how tight they are. If they're really tight, sometimes it's easier to do one at a time. Keeping the rest of the body soft, just lifting a sit bone and releasing it, lifting a sit bone and releasing it. Finding that length and release. Whilst you do it, try and breathe wide into the sides of your rib cage. And then soften the knees. Find the three corners of each of your feet, push them down into the floor. Lift through the belly, drop through the tail. Release yourself back into pelvic neutral, lifting up through the belly, lifting through the bottom ribs to bring you back up into standing. We're going to come back standing, feet hip width apart. And I just want to finish off with our rest breaths that we do at the end where we do our corkscrew movement. We're going to breathe in and float the arms up. We're going to breathe out, bring the hands to the back of the head, soften the shoulder blades. Breathe in, slide the shoulder blades up to your ears. Breathe out, drop them down and away. Breathe in, release the head and neck forward. Breathe out, lift the head back and up. Breathe in, reach up. And breathe out, release down. And one more time, breathing in and up. Breathing out, hands to the back of the head. Breathing in and up. Breathing out and down. Breathing in, drop the head forwards. Breathe out, lift the head back up. Breathe in, reach up. Breathe out, release back down. Well done, everybody.